have that one because God, if you listen and help. That's what the Browns were saying. Oh my God. I mean, man alive, Bloom. The Browns lose to the Jets 23-16, the final score, and they don't have anybody to throw to because of COVID, close contact for, let me know if I miss anybody, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, and Jarvis Landry. I think there was like somebody else. But anyway, like for the people that we are watching, the skill position players, yeah, they're without anything. Now, fortunately, you had Nick Chubb. He got a rushing touchdown, 28 yards rushing on the day. Also 5 for 38 as a receiver. Austin Hooper, if you had plugged him in thinking, well, hey, Baker Mayfield doesn't have anybody to throw to except Austin Hooper, 7 for 71. Okay. All right. Kareem Hunt with a rushing touchdown on the day. Also 3 for 41 as a receiver. Then we look at Jamarcus Bradley. Nobody started him. 5 for 60. Harrison Bryant and David Njoku combined for 7 catches. Nobody started them. You might have started Baker, maybe 285 yards, no touchdowns, no INTs. But again, Bloom, this outcome is not surprising given the fact that he had nobody to throw to.
Yeah, the limitations of Baker Mayfield. Before we launch in, I'll say thank you to anybody listening, hearing the sound of my voice now. Thank you, folks, for giving us this opportunity again to serve you. And also, I think it's important to point out, take this moment, Cease, because there were moments that it was unclear, I felt ambivalent about it. I know that we've helped people kind of stay sane. All the people giving us a chance to do this for them has helped us stay sane. And there were a lot of people working behind the scenes, specifically, especially the players and coaches and staffs of the team that made this season happen. They made sacrifices. Some of them maybe have gotten COVID, even in a way that might affect them permanently, where they wouldn't have without this season. And it was important to keep our sanity. We're almost there. We're almost to the end. And we are to the end of the fantasy football season. Well, there's still 2 more games. And we'll see how it all breaks down. We'll go over the heroes and zeros and see this is a wonderful thing to get to. Every moment is sacred and special to get to go through this calendar. Now we are another Week 16 recap. And I'm getting all conclusory because we'll be back with a Week 17 preview. I'll be back with a special vision on the couch this week. We'll be back at playoff previews and college scouting and
snorkel, scuba, submarine,
all that good stuff. Maybe some stuff, unexpected stuff, some stuff that we haven't done before because we just enjoy spending this time with each other.
It might not be on this channel.
Yeah, well, and some stuff on this channel too. Encourage us, you always do. All right, Cleveland. Wow, what a study in the misery of fan bases, Cease. What a study. Because we had Browns, Jets, and we had Jags, Bears today. Miserable fan bases. Well, the Browns, not so miserable, as there were some moments that they took their licks this year from teams like the Ravens and Steelers, but they gave some licks. And coming into this game, it felt like, especially until yesterday, they're surging. Of course they're going to beat the Jets. They're going to have a chance to win the division. The Steelers are probably going to lose to the Colts. They can host a playoff game. Not just make the playoffs, host a playoff game. Not so fast. Again, the wide receivers. But hey, this is a team with an offense that revolves around running backs. And they've got tight ends, 3 deep. They can do this with Baker Mayfield at the helm. But the limitations of Baker Mayfield. And he's not the type of quarterback that usually goes number 1 overall. Because those quarterbacks have advantages, mobility, size and strength, arm talent. Mayfield doesn't really have any of these things. And in this case, it was ball security. 3 fumbles. And I'll give Mayfield credit. He seems like a dude that's only concerned really with his team and the fate of his team. And he's going to take this hard. He kept the team in the game, but, it's the defense, too, that we have to look at here with the Browns. Backfield, you started Hunt, you started Chubb. They helped you get here. They didn't necessarily help you win the title, but they weren't a reason that you didn't win the title either. Austin Hooper, you can't be disappointed with what you got from him. Really, a touchdown would have been the capper. And again, they were in position to win this game or tie it. Baker fumbles on a quarterback sneak, his 3rd fumble of the game. And the Jets, and Cease, at this point, here's my analogy for Jets fans. How you doing out there, Chase Stewart, others? They're in a car that's on fire that was driven over a cliff by a maniac. And they're just in the fall. Like for the 2 years now, they're just falling over the cliff, just waiting to hit the ground. Like, have we hit the ground yet? Have we hit the ground yet? And they're winning, and it's still disastrous, right? They're winning, and maybe even if they win out, if they beat the Patriots, management might say, well, with these 3 wins, Adam Gase hasn't had a fair shot yet to show what he can do. So is it good that the Jets won? I don't know, but they won.
But they won, and they did that with Sam Darnold throwing for a couple of touchdowns. Jamison Crowder got involved as a passer and threw a touchdown as well, in addition to catching a touchdown, not from himself. 7 for 92 on a touch for Crowder. Braxton Berrios, 3 for 60. And there's that touch from Jamison Crowder. Chris Herndon, 4 for 34 on a touch. There's dynasty stock finally doing something. Rashard Perriman didn't get anything, 6 targets. Denzel Mims didn't get anything, 2 targets. Frank Gore, now only the 3rd member of the 16,000 plus yard rushing club, 14 for 48 on the day. As a big Walter Payton guy, Bloom, I'd love if he beat Emmitt Smith's record. Probably not going to happen. I think he's still like 2,300 yards away, something like that. So that's never going to be seen. But the fact that Gore's still, running the way he is, it's a miracle. It's the season of miracles. And that's why the Jets won.
Yeah, it's just a good all-around game. And it was Jamison Crowder. Not an automatic play. Was healthier coming into this game, throwing a touchdown, catching a touchdown, which was embarrassing, by the way. Like, you should never give up a touchdown when there's nobody else on the screen with the player. That is a breakdown. And they made it held up. They made enough defensive plays to make the points hold up. As you said, Frank Gore, we give tribute to him. And we start to look to the future. Who even knows what this Jets team is going to look like next year? Who's going to be the quarterback? I guess Joe Douglas will be there. Joe Douglas will outlast Adam Gase, I guess. I don't know. Will Jamison Crowder be there? He's due like almost $8 million next year. Will the new regime want to keep him? Chris Herndon caught a touchdown. Will he get a chance somewhere else? It's just nothing but question marks. So the Jets win, and you might say it's the most hollow win of the day, but we still haven't talked about the Bears and the Jags yet.
Yeah, that's coming up in just a little bit. Ravens over the Giants, 27-13, the final score. Daniel Jones was back. You get 252, 1 touchdown, no INTs. The touchdown later to Sterling Shepard, 9 for 77 and a touch there. Evan Ingram, 7 for 65 in this contest. Wayne Gallman, only 27 yards on the ground, and then 26 yards as a receiver. You didn't start anybody else from this team. And, of course, they fall short, Bloom. Daniel Jones was back, and this game plan, just the plan in general, completely inept.
Yeah, so Baker Mayfield, going into this year, Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones were quarterbacks that you wouldn't say they were definitely on the outs if they didn't have a good year, but this was a big year for a new regime to evaluate them. Baker Mayfield, even though he didn't will his team to the victory today, has done some good things and certainly seems like he's in alignment with the offensive staff. Can't say the same for Daniel Jones. But then again, what kind of quarterback would be in alignment with the offensive staff? I don't even know at this point. So Daniel Jones, like Sam Darnold, maybe, who you're just talking about, might be somebody that we don't feel like got a fair shake until his second team. But certainly in this game, he wasn't going to be doing much. What is there to even talk about? Were you counting on any Giants? I'm sorry if you were. Sterling Shepard came through, but I don't know why you would have went with him. Evan Ingram was okay. He'll be back again next year. Dante Pettis sighting. Dante Pettis.
Hey.
Remember they claimed him? Yeah. And that's it. And now the Giants, well, they do have a role in the Week 17 opera. They can prevent the Cowboys from having a chance to win the division. That matters. We know the hatred runs deep in the NFC East, right? Like, ask any fan, Jason Wood, ask any fan of any NFC East team, and they hate the other 3 teams, and they all have bad blood and games they can go back and remember. Can this be another one where the Giants are where the Cowboys stubbed their toe? No stubbed toes for the Ravens today, though.
No, Ravens business as usual, which means Gus Edwards, Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins leading the way on the ground. Lamar had 2 touchdowns passing, 183 yards passing, also 80 yards rushing. Gus Edwards, 85 yards rushing. J.K. Dobbins, 77 yards rushing and 1 rushing touchdown. There's Gus Edwards also with 37 yards receiving. And, J.K. Dobbins was targeted, but he didn't catch it. Mandrew caught a lot. 6 for 76. And then Marquise Hollywood had a touchdown, 25 yards receiving. Des Bryant gets another touchdown. And well, that's about it for people you're considering, and you probably weren't even considering Bryant. But the Baltimore Ravens just kind of coast and make it look easy and drop almost 30.
Exactly, sort of day 27. It wasn't quite as big as you hoped. If you started Lamar Jackson, you started J.K. Dobbins, got a little banged up in this one. You started Marquise Brown, you started Mark Andrews. They did enough. They weren't a reason you won, but they weren't a reason you lost. And the Giants' vaunted defense wasn't really a lot of resistance. There was a play here in garbage time where Lamar Jackson, I think, was credited with the fumble. Deducted, I don't know. It was a handoff to Gus Edwards, the goal line, or Gus Edwards could have came through for you. Gus Edwards looking good here. Mark Ingram, a healthy scratch. Hollywood Brown getting the touchdown early, and then that's it. It was just too easy. But the most important thing that happened here is Baltimore comes into the day not in control of their destiny, especially after that amazing comeback win by Fitzmagic. Because Cleveland loses, because the Colts lose. We'll talk about that. Spoiler alert. Now the Ravens in control of their own destiny, and a team I think nobody will want to face in the wild card round. They just have to beat Cincinnati, and they are in.
Done and done. Now, Colts Steelers. Are we going to get into like a little mini Steelers argument here, Bloom?
Yeah.
Because of our pregame rants where you're like, he's back. And I was like, meh, doing the playoffs. Like, okay, here we go. Steelers get the win 28-24 over the Colts. Phillip Rivers, 270 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. The touchdown to Zach Pascal, 3 for 64. T.Y. Hilton probably held a couple of times, 3 for 60 on the day. Jack Doyle, 4 for 50. Michael Pittman, 3 for 38. And a host of others, but 2 rushing touchdowns for Jonathan Taylor, helping you if you went up against Alvin Kamara. You need all the help you can get, Bloom. And Taylor was there for you. It just wasn't enough for the Colts to get the win.
Taylor definitely a Week 16 hero. Don't shy away from the matchup. He scored twice, ran well. Even though the Colts were without their starting 2 tackles, interior offensive line doing some work, especially in the red zone, where Taylor was making it count. Phillip Rivers played well enough. He wasn't the reason they lost the game. Mike Hilton's interception was nice. Certainly, without your starting tackles, to do what Rivers did was enough. But the Colts, opposite of the Ravens, come into the day controlling their destiny, leave, and now they need help. They need someone to lose next week, or they need the Titans to lose twice. They need Cleveland to lose, playing Pittsburgh. So that's good news, is the Steelers, as we'll talk about, still playing for seeding here, number 2 versus number 3. Zach Pascal got the touchdown, not T.Y. Hilton, so Hilton slowing down, still not looking as dead in the water for fantasy as he did, say, 2 months ago. Not much else spreading it around. Jack Doyle making some plays, Naeem Hines. Love seeing his emergence this year. But the Colts, and they had this one. They were moving the ball on the Steelers. The Steelers' offense looked inept, flaccid, as it has for like the last 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't finish. Or maybe Ben Roethlisberger said, I'm not done yet. I've not written my last chapter yet. He had a second half cease, the biggest second half comeback in Mike Tomlin's tenure. So all those years Roethlisberger had so much more to work with physically. He never led this kind of comeback. And absolutely, after what we saw, they know the whole NFL is watching on Monday night as the Bengals, the Bengals have a winning streak, beat them. They answered the bell, Cease, and maybe, just maybe, rekindle a little hope that they can make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, not for me.
Come on.
You said last week I'd become more bitter than you as a Steelers fan, right?
Yeah.
As I sat there and I watched what I could of that game, I was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. Ben, hey, hanging in there. Hey, it's like, all right, doing the playoffs, be more than happy to lose my shirt. Autocorrect, I'm tired of your shirt. Ben Roethlisberger, keep your shirt on, buddy. 3 touchdowns, 342 yards passing. Juju with the late touchdown, 9 for 96 and a touch. Deontay Johnson, 8 for 75 and a touch. Eric Ebron, 5 for 47 and a touch, and lots of complaining. Chase Claypool, 4 for 54 in this one. A couple of targets down the sideline where just wasn't on the same page. Actually played defender on one play. Who was that, Bloom, that was going to grab that from Claypool and kind of like interfered with him, right?
Yeah.
So, and then there's a rushing touchdown from James Conner. Can't forget that. 5 for 20. But, the Steelers are a passing team. We know the advanced data. We know the numbers. That's what they're going to do. They're going to live and die by that old withered arms. Like when Bugs Bunny goes to flex against the boxer and he falls down. It's like, yeah, that's Ben. Maybe he can get the knockout punch somehow, some way.
Well, that's what looks so hopeless, right? When you're predictable and you're predictable in short yardage, like you're going to crowd everything towards the line of scrimmage. It's just too easy to defend that. And that's what we saw in the first half with the Steelers. They look terrible. Look like there's just no way you can expect this offense to win a game against anybody. And then in the second half, and see, it's Deontay Johnson, who, of course, there's some times that Deontay Johnson was limping around in this one. That's just part of Deontay Johnson. But his deep speed, yes, he has deep speed, even though he's usually used on these short routes. Getting behind the defense, a sprawling catch, and it kind of woke up Roethlisberger. Cue the Rocky music. Here he comes. And Roethlisberger made the plays. You should not have started Ben Roethlisberger today, but if you did, he came through for you. You should not have started James Conner. If you did, in PPR leagues, you'll take it. You'll feel like you got away with one as Benny Snell getting a little more praise. So twice now this year, we've seen Snell come for Conner's job, and Conner, like the team, answer the bell. And I think that he is better in the passing game. And Cease, I think you're right. Just embrace it. You're a team that's going to throw 45 times a game because that's just who you are. But at least you have Ben Roethlisberger making some throws that extend the field a little bit. Juju comes through, racking up catches in the second half. Deontay Johnson with the big touchdown comes through for you. Ebron comes through for you, which I don't know if I was advising many people to play Ebron, but yeah, he does come through. Chase Claypool doesn't come through. But with Roethlisberger feeling as though it's getting playoff fantasy football, player props, DFS, that kind of stuff, we'll see. I still don't love the way that Claypool goes up for those contested balls, but it was enough. And that's what we're talking about, the passing game. Now, next week, is it the 2 seed or is it the 3 seed? We still have to watch Buffalo. We still have to see what Buffalo against Miami. So, see, this is one of the fun things about this year. Next week, there's playoff implications everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that Kansas City's the number 1 seed. What else do we even know? Where else is a seed locked down? The NFC East winner is going to be the 4 seed. Otherwise, everything's up for grabs. It's really like a year I don't remember. And that's going to be fun. Steelers part of that. It's going to affect their seeding. It's going to affect Cleveland's. They can knock Cleveland out of the playoffs. Wow. So just when we were starting to not care about Steelers games, they pull us back in.
They get us back in. And Bloom, I really think it's the one bye thing. I when that rule came down, I was like, oh, I hate that. Extra team in the playoffs, one bye. But now it creates some very interesting scenarios for week 17. Don't play fantasy football in week 17. I mean, DFS, whatever.
Right.
You're always playing that. Use those prop bets, baby. But Bloom, do you have your Audible bingo card ready?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I should go back and retweet myself from when Samaje Perine came out of college and I called him Motorboat Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
Yeah, see? Because as I rant about social networking, and Twitter is 3% of our audience, everybody. I'm a big deal on Twitter. It's 3% of our audience. It's not very relevant. It's fun. Some conversations are fun. Some are annoying. Mostly the ones I have with Jags fans. But anyway, if I was that guy, Bloom, I would go back. I would find all of my Samaje Perine love, and I would say, totally see how right I was about Samaje Perine, because it would be a big deal, even though it's not. So hit your bingo card, grab your drink, and let's talk about the Bengals and the Texans. 37-31, the final score. Brandon Allen, 370, just like they drew up. 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, no INTs, 1 to T. Higgins, 6 for 99 and a touch, 1 to Drew Sample, 1 for 8 and a touch. Then you look at the backfield, you're like, okay, Gio, do it again. 16 for 65 for Gio on the ground, 7 for 66 as a receiver. Alex Erickson had 6 for 88. Don't know how many people started him. Maybe AJ Green, 4 for 64. Maybe you had him in. But Samaje Perine, the big man, the Motorboat Rookie that never was, because he couldn't stay healthy and wasn't really good when he was healthy, had 90. Again, it's the Texans, people, but still, this is what happens in championship week. I got beat by D Brown one year, not the Reebok. Pump up your Reebok Celtics, D Brown. Former Syracuse running back, Bloom. Damn you, Syracuse. The Oranges. But 95 yards for Perine on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then 4 for 41. I didn't even think the big man could catch like that. But it's the Texans, Bloom, and, well, that's why the Bengals and everybody on the roster seemingly came through.
Exactly. It's this game where we had two teams going nowhere, and we had not a lot of defense. So even Brandon Allen is a prolific passer. And hey, he wasn't a backup coming into this year. It was Ryan Finley. So maybe Brandon Allen made himself some money with this game, although he needs to cut a little bit for Romeo Crennel and that defense. Two bad teams. And see, Panay Sewell, am I saying that right? The big tackle?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what does Cincinnati need? An offensive line. What does Houston need? Well, everything. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they would also love, even though they have Laramie Tunsil, a tackle. And I think that Houston moves ahead of Cincinnati with this result. So that's fascinating. You know, a lot of talk about who's going to get Trevor Lawrence, who's going to get Sewell, that big tackle. But we're concerned mostly about fantasy football. Giovanni Bernard, hero, especially in PPR leagues. And even though he split with Samaje Perine, still a hero in Perine, I have no idea who would have started him. That's a really deep league.
I didn't even put him on my roster as one of those, what do we call them, where we just want people.
Ceremonial. Get a ring.
Diego's had Marshawn Lynch, right? One of those ceremonial. I didn't even put Perine on my team for championship week.
Now, T. Higgins, you really might have played.
Yes.
And with Tyler Boyd out, it seemed like an even better play again. Do we trust Brandon Allen to throw to one of our targets, or do we trust the Houston defense to be terrible, which it was in this one? So Higgins comes through. The other thing you got to think about here, maybe losing the best offensive tackle in the draft season, are they saving Zach Taylor's job? So we're getting to all these optics where your team wins, but is it a good thing if it keeps them from moving forward, or at least not holding on to the past? I don't know. Does Zach Taylor deserve to stay the coach based on this game and the Steelers game? We'll see what he does against Baltimore next week. Was he even supposed to be fired after? I have no idea. But again, just like Jets fans, Bengals fans, they don't know up from down anymore. Is it good that our team's losing? Is it bad that our team's losing? I know that Deshaun Watson doesn't like losing. He feels like it's bad.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson getting thrown around a little bit, but 324, 3 touchdowns, no INTs. Brandon Cook, 7 for 141 and a touch. Darren Fells, you can't stop him. Only one catch, but it was for a touchdown. David Johnson gets a receiving touchdown, also a rushing touchdown, 128 yards on the ground. So there you go. Kiki Cutie, 5 for 54. It's enough. You wanted a touchdown, don't get greedy. Jordan Akins, I guess. I don't know who's splitting up that tight end room there. But the Texans, again, fall short, and you just feel bad for Deshaun Watson. Hopefully something changes pretty soon.
And by the way, something needs to change in my head is everyone's yelling at me. Miami has Houston's number 1 pick. Miami doesn't necessarily need an offensive tackle, but they could trade down with a team that does, that could deny Cincinnati that big tackle. And they drafted their 2 tackles this year. They like Jackson and Hunt. So that's slipped my mind. How could I have that slip by my mind as the chat room reminded me? David Johnson. This is kind of like Kenyon Drake last year, where he wasn't really doing anything for fantasy, and then in week 15 and week 16, he might have won your title. John Snyder, thanks for that, by the way, reminding me on Tunsil. David Johnson. See, so there's going to be a lot of people, you say, how did you win a title this year? David Johnson, Either I didn't drop him, or once I saw someone drop him, I picked him up and waited, and he scored as a receiver. He scored as a runner. He looked good, and he's expensive next year. Again, like $8-9 million. I have no idea who's calling the shots for the Texans. I don't think they're going to keep him for that, but they might restructure. And at least he's playing his best football at the end of the year. Brandon Cook's a hero. You hadn't seen him come up with a big game, but you knew with Kiki Cutie and Chad Hansen as the number 2 and number 3, the potential was there. Again, bad defense in here. Deshaun Watson solid. And just, you don't see any let up in him, no matter what's going on around him, no matter what the record is, no matter where the season's headed. Kiki Cutie, I guess, was okay with his 5. Didn't wear the socks, though. Not sock worthy. We'll see if he has sock worthy next week against Tennessee team fighting for their life.
Bears and Jaguars up next. The Week 16 recap here on the Audible. 41-17, the final score, and Mitchell Trubisky gets a couple of touchdowns and a pick in this one. Both of the touchdowns, Jimmy Graham, 4 for 69 and 2 TDs. Allen Robinson, 10 for 103 in this contest. Darnell Mooney, 4 for 39. There's David Montgomery, 23-95 and a rushing touchdown. Also a couple catches, 26 yards. Artavis Pierce, Oregon State, Bloom, top of my head, 26 yards on the ground, also a rushing touchdown. And Mitchell Trubisky had a rushing touchdown as well, maybe saving his job.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chicago, but this is what you get.
Yeah, as if you have we had a game, Cease, that we've broken down before where both teams' fan bases should have been lustily rooting against their team?
Yes.
I mean, there actually was a moment in Jacksonville when the Bears scored their first touchdown when the Jags fans were like, yeah, woo. It's just how it is to be a Bears fan and a Jags fan, you know? What road have these franchises taken so that in week 16 of 2020, their fan bases don't want them to win? I mean, it makes sense only at this moment, but as if you've lived through it as a fan of either team, and see, it's eerie too, because it's like Blake Bortles. When Blake Bortles got deep in the playoffs, like, whoa, okay, let's go ahead and keep him. And it just extends the agony. But Trubisky was pretty good for fantasy. If you relied on Trubisky, you're thrilled with what you got. Again, Jacksonville, like that Houston defense, you can count on them. Remember that for DFS as the Colts try to stay alive against them next week. But Trubisky also had one terrible interception. See, it was like he ran 20 yards just to throw it into quadruple coverage in the end zone. It was terrible. It's one of those throws that's almost like a disqualifier, right? Like if you're evaluating a college quarterback and you get to that play, you're like, oh no.
Shall not pass.
Yeah, how are you wired so that your brain says, good decision, throw the ball at that moment? But he did, and he was a great fantasy quarterback. Dave Montgomery was a hero this year, although this was not the reason you won your title today. He wasn't a reason you lost because he came through, but he didn't come through with the kind of numbers he's had the last few weeks. Again, because Trubisky finishing with 2 to Jimmy Graham. And yes, I have seen some playoff teams in finals today with Jimmy Graham in there. So good luck. Congratulations. If you counted on that, it was Darnell Mooney we liked kind of coming up on the outside as a secondary target for Trubisky in this one. But no, Jimmy Graham. Allen Robinson. Get this man a quarterback. He comes through for us. What could Allen Robinson be doing if he was playing with the top half of the league quarterback, Cease? Is he ever going to get a chance to do that? He's a free agent.
No.
I know. Poor Allen Robinson. So here we are. San Francisco beats Arizona. And the door is open now for the Bears. All they have to do is beat the Packers, and they can make the playoffs. And what would this set in motion, Cease? Keeping Ryan Pace, keeping Matt Nagy, keeping Mitchell Trubisky, maybe even signing Trubisky to a multi-year deal. Do you want your team to win, Bears fans? I have no idea. Welcome to 2020.
2020 it is. Jaguars, let's welcome to hot LaVisca Chenault talk.
Yeah.
5 for 48 and a touch. DJ Chark 4 for 62 and a touch. It was Mike Glennon that won the quarterback competition during the week. Okay. 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. No James Robinson. Oh. But Dare Ogunbowale 14 for 71 in this contest. Divine Zigbo didn't do anything. Carry and a catch, basically. So Darong Bawale also had 3 catches for 7 yards. So that counts PPR league. So let's talk about the Jaguars, and they'll be moving on with Trevor Lawrence. London.
Yeah, right. But with Trevor Lawrence. So Jags fans, this is what you get. They were never, well, they were kind of in this game. I think it was 17-10 when Trubisky threw that end zone interception. But you knew Mike Glennon was not really going to keep him in the game. See, I said Mike Glennon revenge game. I can't remember who it was. It's like, revenge for what? For the Bears giving him too much money? what's the revenge? Dario Gumbawale looked pretty good. Yeah, and you see week 16, week 17, we see who gets their chance. Ogunbowale didn't fit after they went with a more veteran movement at running back for Tampa. He shows a little bit. We'll get a chance probably to show a little bit more. We'll see. I don't think we're going to see James Robinson next week. DJ Chark finally had a touchdown that reminds you how good he is. They compared it in the broadcast to the touchdown that DeAndre Hopkins scored last week. Anytime you're making a play and they say that's like a DeAndre Hopkins play, he good. Just needs a quarterback. LaVisca Chenault. Was it the first play he made as a downfield receiver this year, Cease? I think it was.
Seems like it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he looked natural. So if you're a little worried, like is Chenault just Cordero Patterson part 2? Didn't look like it on that one.
Just got to stay healthy, man.
Yeah. So these are the guys that Trevor Lawrence is going to be thrown to. These are the people in your neighborhood. And it's good because there's talent. Chark, Chenault, it's talent. James Robinson, that's talent. Trevor Lawrence is talent. And it's official now. The Jags. See, 2-3 weeks ago, we would have said, 10% chance 5% chance. It's a Christmas miracle. The Jags get the number 1 pick.
That's how you get that electromagnetic lock to unlock.
Yeah.
It's a season of miracles. I give you the FBI. So on Christmas Day, Bloom, I watched A Christmas Story, of course, because it's on a loop. I watched Die Hard.
Die Hard, yeah, we watched that.
I watched It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
I watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Nice.
I watched Elf. I just sat around and ate and watched things and watched the kids open their presents. So that was awesome. So there you go. Let's move on. A disappointing day, Bloom. Would you say Falcons Chiefs? A disappointing day because fantasy GMs are like, okay, Pat Mahomes, you got me here. I went up against Alvin Kamara. I need you. Right? It's like in Half Baked when it's like, Jerry, I need you, man. We really need you. And well, 17-14. I mean, the Chiefs get the win. They sew up the bye. Okay, cool. But from a fantasy perspective, you wanted a whole hell of a lot more than you got from the Chiefs. And even from the Falcons, Bloom, I know I answered some Matt Ryan questions over the week, and it was like, well, going up against the Chiefs, I've put the foot on the gas. We had 300 yards, 300 exactly, 2 touchdowns. Okay, Sandy, but it could have been a little more. How's Calvin Ridley not a Pro Bowler? 5 for 130 for Calvin Ridley. Hayden Hurst gets one of those touchdowns, 5 for 47 in this contest. The other one, Laquan Treadwell, nobody started him. Todd Gurley, 3 for 34 as a receiver, 4 for 16 as a rusher. Ito Smith, the lead back, 10 for 46 on the ground. That was it. So a bunch of collection of other little numbers, little things here and there, Bloom, that I won't go over. This was mainly about Hurst, maybe you had in. Ridley, you certainly should have had in. And then what Matt Ryan did or did not do for your fantasy team. And again, based on the opponent, we thought the score would be 34-28, not 17-14.
Oh, you're so Falcons. A great effort, really. Great all-around effort by this team. They go into Kansas City. I think everyone would say they're the best team in the NFL. And whatever you want to say about Kansas City's effort on offense, which we will talk about, on defense, Kansas City was making life hard for Matt Ryan. And he was answering it with no Julio Jones. Short, quick passing, a little slow at first. But, hey, he led a 98-yard drive. I know Cleveland fans are like, ugh. 98-yard drive for a touchdown. And it was there. At the end, a couple of different ways. Ito Smith, by the way, lead back, but lead back just means lead back in a committee. Brian Hill had a nice moment or two in this game, especially in the second half. Calvin Ridley's fantastic. See, next year, Calvin Ridley will go ahead of Julio Jones. Finally. It should have happened this year in hindsight. Calvin Ridley, so good. Hayden Hurst, coming on. Again, like we talked about, maybe not worth a second-round pick, but coming on, scoring on a shovel pass. It was actually Russell Gage, who had a terrific year to advance his career, but in fantasy, if you're relying on him after he'd been pretty consistent over the last 5 weeks, not so much this week. And it was there. Brandon Powell fumbling in the red zone or close to the red zone. Willie Gay, the second-round pick for the Chiefs, making a tremendous play there. Then CCC, and we'll, spoiler alert for the Kansas City side, okay? A.J. Terrell, the rookie, goes up and makes just a tremendous play to maybe seal the game.
Seal the win.
Yeah. Comes down and just can't secure it, pinning it to his body as he hits the ground. Incomplete, play over.
In the end zone, by the way.
What's that? In the end zone, yeah. Raheem Morris does the spite challenge. Like, I hate that outcome. I know that there's no way to overturn this, but I want to just show my, if you raise a kid, you've seen this, right? Like, I just don't like what's happening. And I'm just doing this because I want the world to know I don't like this. There's no chance the play is going to get overturned. Like, in no theory is that going to be ruled an interception. I have no idea. But then they get the ball back. Down 3. But they have one less timeout. And now they're operating down around the 20-yard line with only about 20 seconds left. If Raheem Morris doesn't have that spite challenge. So there's all these different ways. And it's the Falcons. Like, you play hard. You play well. For what in the end? For what? This is where, these roads that lead back to the same place for fan bases. It's all about fan misery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the Falcons, it was a great performance for this team. And it was a loss. Tampa Bay next week.
And it was a loss that, I don't know, a win might have sealed Raheem Morris, maybe, or given him a better shot.
Sure. Or for some other team, you know?
And now it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Maybe it didn't happen for you because you started Pat Mahomes. That's really weird that I have to say that in the fantasy championship week. But let's say you had Brady or Mahomes, right, Bloom? And Brady did like twice this much and a half.
Yeah.
Eddie. Okay. Pat Mahomes had 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. Travis Kelce, 7 for 98 and a touch. Demarcus Robinson with the other touch, 2 for 29 and a touch. Tyreek Hill, 4 for 65. Then you're thinking, I had some Le'Veon Bell or DeAndre Swift questions. I went with Swift. It wasn't much different than Le'Veon Bell, who had 7 for 30 on the ground and then a catch for 9 yards. So that's what? 3 point. Well, I guess Swift had what, 10 points? We don't do the Saturday games. But anyway, Darrell Williams, though, had 46 yards on the ground. They just don't need to run the ball. They didn't really need to win big. They really didn't need to do much. They did enough, Bloom, and, well, that'll do, Pig.
Cease, it's like a marathon, right? And you know that you have like a 2-mile lead on the number 2 runner. And so, I mean, even in marathon time, like you're like, yeah, maybe I'll stop and like grab a beer or something. You know, that's what it feels like the Chiefs are doing. They have set the pace. When the Steelers started losing, it really let up any pressure on them to be flawless. You know, it took their margin of error and increased it. And don't you just feel like this is a team that kind of knows how to pace itself? It's Mahomes, right? Like most teams, you say you can't just turn it on and off. But it's Mahomes.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, when you're Mahomes, you can. And he did, although he really didn't. He should have lost this game. And let me tell you, first of all, Chiefs getting maybe a little too cute with it. You know, you won a Super Bowl, and everybody can attest. I know the Broncos won back-to-back seasons, but that second run after he won, you know, what are they doing? They're doing some old-timey play where, like, there's all this synchronized motion, and then Sammy Watkins throws an interception. Watkins got hurt in this game, too,
Pat Mahomes, who was going to, like, never catch that pass.
Right. He was actually covered very well.
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes throws a bad interception to Foye Oluokun, Yale, Ivy League, former safety. He has a real nice return. Bad interception. Like, I mean, if you saw that one play, you'd say that quarterback made a horrible decision on that play.
A loss would have been better for him today, Bloom. Kind of jar the system right before the playoffs.
Right, and then as they're driving down the field, AJ Terrell, and it was a good play by AJ Terrell, but Mahomes put it where Terrell could get it, and he got his hands on it and pulled it into his chest and just could not secure it. It was a disinterested offense, honestly. You could feel it. When you watch a game, you just get a feel. And, I mean, like you said, Cease, because they won, they just feel like, I mean, now, granted, this is a team that fell behind by 24 points. They look like a team that was a number 1 seed coming off of their bye in the playoffs, right? Like, just got to wake up, but they didn't really wake up in the game. Now, last year, they fell behind 24-0 and 1 going away, and we're leading at halftime. So no wonder they have this internalized. We can just turn it on whenever we want. Darrell Williams is better than Bell. Le'Veon Bell, it just doesn't happen. Stop trying to make Le'Veon Bell happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like you said, in fantasy terms, you know, Hill, and we knew he was a little banged up. I don't know how much that affected him, but he wasn't a hero. Mahomes, not a hero. If your team won with Mahomes on it, it was because of somebody else. It wasn't because of Patrick Mahomes. It might have been because of Travis Kelce setting the all-time record for yards, tight end. How high does he go in draft next year? 5, 6 or so. He deserves it. A lot of heroes there. Number 1 seed, Kansas City Chiefs. Next week we'll see a lot of players rest against the Chargers.
Yes, against those Chargers who beat the Broncos today, although they tried to choke. They did. They gave themselves the Heimlich maneuver. They did the thing on the chair, right, Bloom, where you lean over it.
Do that.
Yep. Chargers 19, Broncos 16, double-digit losses for the Broncos for 3 of the last 4 years. It is such a joy to cover this team. Drew Lock. It's not his fault. It's Jerry Jeudy. Oh, my God. Like, oh, God. Here we go with the Lock supporters. Like, there's some good things that Drew Lock does. There's also a ton of bad things that he does. Nobody can talk realistically about it because you're a hater. And listen, like it's all very personal, right? Bloom, you talked about the rap battles. And like, listen, in Denver sports radio, there's the fan and there's everybody else. Trust me, I've been on both sides of it. And when you're the everybody else side, you don't get ratings. Don't brag about your ratings. You don't get any. We get all of them. Like, again, I know I spent 5 years at ESPN Denver fighting against the fan. You just can't win. So when like the guys on KOA, all dear friends of mine, but when they're like, oh, we can talk about anything. No, you can't. I know. I used to work for the team affiliate. I know what you aren't allowed to say. The report from Adam Schefter, which everybody already knew, but Adam talked to Elway. See, there's talking to PR guys, which people had did about a month ago to just check if Vic Fangio was safe. And the PR guy said he was safe, so they could report he's safe. Then Schefter talks to Elway and says today Fangio's safe. Well, then the question becomes why? Why is he safe? Because Joe Ellis likes him? That's the real answer. Because John Elway likes him? That's another real answer. This is worse than what Vance Joseph was here. And Vance Joseph got ran out of town. They wanted to do it after the first year, Bloom. I won't go into further details about that, but yeah, they wanted to get rid of Vance Joseph after a year. And this is what you get now with Vic Fangio. Okay. So now the Drew Lock supporters are blind. They're going to drop. Well, this was the XYZ read, and he went here on 22Y banana, and that's the play, and they totally did fine. Like, oh my God. There still needs to be growth and development from this quarterback. And when you try to talk about it with nuance, people lose their mind because either you're seen as a hater because you brought up something negative about Locke, or you're seen as a homer because you say something good about Locke. The answer is always somewhere in between. And the answer is he's probably not the guy. For him to work out as the guy would be very rough. Now, 2 picks on the day, Bloom, but the one was a Hail Mary at the end. Who cares? Mike Williams caught it, by the way.
Yeah, IDP leagues, you get credit for it.
Oh, okay. Okay, Sandy. All right. Well, so Locke a couple of picks, but what, 50% passing, basically, 264 yards. He threw 15 passes at Jerry Jeudy. I think there were 4 drops.
Yep.
Jeudy, 6 for 61 on the day. Big drops. It could have been big touchdowns, either one in the end zone that was a touchdown that he dropped, and then one that would have been the biggest play of the day, been like 70-yard touchdown, whatever. Another drop. And here's the other thing about social networking. Again, Audible bingo, Bloom, hit the button twice. He's complaining on Twitter about his role over the last few weeks where he hasn't been doing anything. They haven't been throwing him the ball. He's mainly been a first-round decoy. Well, if you're going to do that with that audience, again, not a very large audience. I know, the usage worldwide, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like overall, Twitter's not that important. Social networking shouldn't be that important that you as a young man go on there and start complaining about your role and then go out and absolutely put up a humiliating performance. This was embarrassing. I feel bad for Jerry Jeudy because he wants to win. I've talked to his teammates. I've talked to people inside that building that still talk, by the way. Hey, Jerry Jeudy wants to win bad, but him and his quarterback aren't on the same page at all. It comes through today, 15 targets. Like they were definitely trying to make a statement like, okay, Jeudy, you want to complain on social networking? We'll show up big. And he didn't. He didn't at all. Tim Patrick was the guy. It was only a couple of catches, but it was 3 for 39. Looked better on his 4 targets. Noah Fant always is working his ass off, man. 6 for 65. Deshaun Hamilton, 5 for 77. Including, the tip that was tipped up in the air, which, by the way, Drew Lock should have thrown sooner because Hamilton did what you're supposed to do. He broke off his route, found a soft spot, and Lock waited. And then when he went to him, he sidearmed it, got tipped, and then picked off. After the first drive, it was like a 10-play drive, Bloom. Melvin Gordon, 79 yards, whatever. Lock gets a rushing touchdown, whatever. So I just want to rant about this team.
Yeah.
Good thing I've got all week to do it, Bloom.
Yeah. Just another game where, like we've said, Locke's probably not the answer, but
he's there every day.
Yeah, he's there every day. Not really feeding anybody. By the way, our cat, our Maine Coon Judy, was down there trying to get my attention while you were doing your Judy rant.
Okay.
But yeah, Judy needs to be more consistent. I think the last player to have 4 drops in a game was Mike Evans. I mean, my brain would say Dante Moncrief, but I don't know if he had 4 drops in that first game of last season against the Patriots. Noah Fant comes through, as you said, for fantasy. Melvin Gordon doesn't come through, but still looks good as a runner. We'll see about his suspension. Will Lindsey even be back with a team? Will they tender him at the original round level that would let somebody else sign him to an offer sheet? So we'll be watching that. Cortland Sutton will be back next year, remember. KJ Hamler goes out with that concussion. And it's Denver. And anybody that's been listening to this has known that Vic Fangio was going to be back. Which for Broncos fans, again, Cease, I mean, do you want as a Broncos fan, do you want this to continue, this era? I don't think so. It's like, again, see, I would suppose if the Jets were the flaming car going over the cliff, the Broncos are just that car that went into the lake and is just slowly filling up with water.
It's what happens when you don't know what to do, Bloom.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you're just like, I don't know what to do, and I'm just going to stay.
Yeah.
You know, we could bring up relationships. We can bring up work things. Like, there's so many times when you just see someone who is over their head. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to change things, so they just stay. And that's what you have with this team.
And for the Chargers, we'll see if they do the same thing with Anthony Lynn, because there's a lot more to work with, but will they stay?
Justin Herbert, you got to work with that guy. 253 yards, touchdown, no INTs. Mike Williams, 4 for 54. Steven Anderson, 4 for 48. Because, again, they're dealing without Keenan Allen. They're dealing without Hunter Henry. So Donald Parham, 2 for 47. I don't know if you threw him in as an emergency guy, but, 2 for 47. Jalen Guyton, 3 for 43. Tyron Johnson, 3 for 26. Austin Eckler, 10 for 45, and then 3 for 23 and a receiving touchdown here. So it wasn't an overwhelming day from pretty much anybody on the Chargers side, but they were able to hold on, although late that looked like they weren't going to do that. And it was, the sheer effort and will of Austin Eckler picking up runs at the end of the game to just secure the victory, like just would not be denied. The little guy back in action for the Chargers.
So Herbert did enough, but for fantasy, he was a 0. A lot of people are regretting Herbert or decisions where they picked Herbert.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. It wasn't like he played a bad game necessarily, was without Keenan Allen, and no one came through. Mike Williams was in a good spot, had 5 for 99 and a touchdown first time against Denver, had 2 touchdowns last time Keenan Allen was out. Not so much. Tight ends split up the production. Steven Anderson, it was good to see him out there running some fools over. Austin Eckler does okay. He does okay. He got a touchdown, had a few nice runs at the end of the game, helped set up the game winner. So he did okay. And for the Chargers, I think you're happy. You have your quarterback. I mean, that's really all that matters. I don't think you have your head coach. Does the ownership realize that? What direction does this team go? Obviously, this is a really big moment, the hire of the head coach, and then how that meshes with Justin Herbert. Because what can he do with a quarterback-friendly head coach that will embrace his talents, like what Patrick Mahomes has had in Andy Reid, quite simply.
Josh Allen's had in Brian Daboll.
Exactly. Thank you. So that's what the job is this offseason for the Chargers. Let's see if they take it on.
What's enough for the Spanos family, though?
Right.
Is it enough just to say, hey, we got a quarterback. Exactly. Hey, we got a new stadium.
We can sell tickets now.
We
can
got
sell
jerseys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that enough? Might be.
Yeah.
It might be.
It is a business.
That is very, very, very sad. It's not football business, but the business of football. Carolina 20, Washington 13. Roughest week of Dwayne Haskins' life. So says Nikki Javala, dear friend of the show, on Twitter. Before we get to Washington side, let's talk about Teddy. 1 up and 1 down, 197 yards on the day, and gets a touchdown to Robbie Anderson, 7 for 39 and a touch. Curtis Samuel, 5 for 106. And then 7 for 52 as a runner. Mike Davis gets a rushing touchdown, only 28 yards on the ground. And, DJ Moore had 5 for 37. Doubt you started him. But it was enough, Bloom. A lot of people think, hey, Washington, they were, getting Gibson back. Of course, losing Terry McLaurin this week. And then the Haskins fiasco, whatever. Like, people thought, Washington, that defense, those pinchers, they'll get after Carolina. Nope. This is 20-3 at half and 20-13 to finish the game.
And really what spun this one out of control for Washington was, I think, with Steven Sims muffing a punt that resulted in a touchdown. Brandon Zylstra maybe got it for the Panthers. It opened up a game script with Dwayne Haskins in there that wasn't going to work out. And Carolina's been a hard team to gauge because they've been competitive at times that you might not expect them and not competitive at times that you would expect them to be. They were competitive in this one. Teddy Bridgewater did enough to keep the receiver values afloat. And this has been a moving target all year. But this week it was Curtis Samuel, and as a runner, Curtis Samuel looked like the best offensive player on the field for the Panthers. And then you did get a Robbie Anderson touchdown. Those have been few and far between. And it was DJ Moore who was the zonk out of the receivers. We'll see what this team does in the draft, because this is a draft with how many seats? 3, 4, 5 even first-round quarterbacks?
Probably 5, yeah.
Panthers certainly have to be one of those teams considering it. And maybe spending whatever draft capital they have to get it. I love Teddy. He's a good backup quarterback, like he was with the Saints last year. He's a quarterback that is their backup who can save your season, but he can't make your season. What were you going to say?
Nah, nothing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I love Teddy.
Yeah.
I love
Mike
Teddy.
Davis didn't do much for you. We love Mike Davis. So, they get New Orleans next week. New Orleans has something to play for. Will they be surprisingly competitive? We'll see, but I know that Washington wishes that they weren't today.
Yes, Washington with Dwayne Haskins out there for a little bit. Taylor Heineke stepped in and looked better. One touchdown on the day for Heineke, 137. Remember, he was with Ron Rivera. Dwayne Haskins, 154 yards, no touchdowns, 2 INTs, just run around, no idea where to go with the ball, except to the other team. Antonio Gibson was back, so that was good, 10 for 61. All right, that's okay. Then you look further down, J.D. McKissick, 8 for 77 and a touchdown. Okay. Cam Sims, 3 for 63. Again, no Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas, 7 for 63. There you go. Steven Sims, 4 for 52. So you planned on using your Simses, Bloom, and you thought maybe Gibson is like a flex play. And then Logan Thomas is a consideration as well, especially with Haskins starting, because that's better for Logan Thomas. And it kind of worked out. Kind of.
Well, I mean, it's going to change draft position in a way that may or may not affect the amount of draft capital they have to give up to get their quarterback. Or maybe they have clarity and they let their quarterback fall to them, like Washington did with Haskins. Yeah. Haskins bench in this game. I know this. He will not be in Washington next year. I don't know if they can get a 7th-round pick for him or something. I don't know where he's going to end up. Pittsburgh. It just feels like it, right? Like that's the beginning of the best Pittsburgh. Well, we got Haskins. What do you expect?
Right.
That's the best we could do given the cap issues. He's done, though. He was terrible. Taylor Heineke was taking classes at Old Dominion. And they're like, you want to be our quarantine quarterback? And now he's playing with a chance to keep the team in the division race, but it doesn't work out. And see, the NFC East this year, it has been memorable. I mean, you think of divisions where a losing team wins. I mean, we had the Beast Quake, so we had that from Seattle when they did that. But usually it's not typified by things that are memorable. But this has been, like that family that lives next door that's usually like they're getting in fights. Usually alcohol's involved. People are having to call the cops. And when the cops come, you're never quite sure who they're going to drag out of the family, right? So this week, at least two of the NFC East was dragged out of the playoff picture. And this was Washington being drug out by Carolina, by Ron Rivera, by his old team. So we know that Washington, who 2 weeks ago was in the driver's seat, and when they beat Pittsburgh, you thought, really, can they do this? Maybe they're going to do this? No, they're not going to do this. What they are going to do is create fantasy value for J.D. McKissick, who made a terrific deep ball touchdown when he was interfered with, and Logan Thomas, who really looks like he's grown into his athleticism and his body to translate as a receiving tight end who's very tough to stop. So he's had a great year in terms of evolution of his game. The best is yet to come with Antonio Gibson, but not today. It just wasn't a game script that was going to work out for him. They did come in intending to feed him. I mean, he was the guy early. I think he had like 7 carries in the first quarter and then barely got the ball after that. So Washington, again, can still be a spoiler like the Giants who got ushered out. They can be a spoiler as Philadelphia got ushered out too. They can still win. See, this is when it's happening, Jason. They can still win if Dallas loses and they win against Philadelphia. But wouldn't you just expect Philadelphia to enter stage left? They exited stage right today.
That's true. You know where I saw Taylor Heineke, Bloom?
Where?
Shrine Game.
Shrine Game, drink.
There you go. That's for Jason, so he can take his bong rip. You guys filthy animals. Cowboys are filthy, huh? 37-17, the final score over the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, 342 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 INTs, also 69 yards rushing on the day. Miles Sanders gets 57 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. Sanders also gets 4 for 27 as a receiver. Deshaun Jackson was back. And if there was one thing that Deshaun Jackson would do, Bloom, it would catch a long pass. He did. It was 81 yards. It was one of them on his one target, and it was 1 touchdown. So there you go. Quez Watkins, there's that speed girl. 2 for 57. Dallas Goedert, 3 for 38. You know, hey, I'll just lean on Dallas Goedert. 3 for 38. Ah, crap. Jalen Reagor, 3 for 30. Zach Ertz, 3 for 33. Like, this alliteration line is not going to cut it in your fantasy championship.
So as Washington's losing to Carolina, getting off to a bad start, there it is. The Eagles may somehow be in control of their own destiny again. All they have to do is beat Dallas. And then all they have to do is beat Washington next week. And early on, it really looked like Dallas's defense. If there was one thing you were sure of in this game, it was that Dallas's defense was not going to be good. And boy, were they having trouble early with the Hurts-Sanders running game, which made sense. I mean, this is a terrible run defense. You saw, what Baltimore did against them. All right. At first, it looked like they were going to be able to do this. And then things just kind of fell apart for them offensively. Now, on the end of it, you still have Jalen Hurts with a very good fantasy game. You can't be disappointed with what you got from him or Miles Sanders in this matchup. Dallas Goedert gets banged up. As we saw last week with Hurts having a tremendous game against Arizona, it still doesn't result in a specific player being a trustworthy play. And that's where we are with everything being spread out here. But as you said, it was Deshaun Jackson with that 81-yard touchdown. And it's like sometimes, Father Time hasn't even touched him in the sense that could have been a play from like 12 years ago. I'm not exaggerating with Deshaun Jackson. So he did put his stamp on this game. But the Eagles, they're the other one getting drug out. I've got it right now. It'll come down to Washington or Dallas. Dallas, still alive, needs some help from Philadelphia, the team they just beat. And finally, Andy Dalton made this offense kind of look like it did with Dak Prescott.
Finally, 377, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. Michael Gallup gets 6 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. Where's Chris with the CSU represent? Amari Cooper with 4 for 121. So if you trusted him to bounce back, he did. CeeDee Lamb, 3 for 65 and a receiving touchdown. Also a rushing touchdown on the day. Zeke, what do you do with Zeke? Bloom is going to play. And well, he had 105 yards. So there you go. 4 for 34 as a receiver. Tony Pollard had 12 yards on the ground and then 8 yards as a receiver. So whoopsie if you had Pollard in, and kudos if you had Zeke in with these Cowboys going off.
Trying to make the playoffs and host a playoff game. Offense finally comes back to life. Mike Garafolo, 5-minute drill alum, with the report that Zeke was going to get, I don't know exactly how he worded it, like the majority of work, something like that. And he did. And he looked spry. He looked good. This is like that Dallas offense we saw against Minnesota about a month ago, but even better. Michael Gallup, who left last week with a hip injury, Colorado State represent, right? Rashard Higgins on the COVID list. So Gallup doing the work. Maybe Preston Williams will be back next week. Gallup in the first half, he had like 6 for 120 in those 2 touchdowns in the first half. Amari Cooper could have had another touchdown, by the way. Andy Dalton put a rate on him. And Andy Dalton was excellent. For a good stretch of this game, Andy Dalton had a perfect passer rating. Yes, with Andy Dalton, it's still the same Cowboys offensive line, with all those problems. And the Eagles have a pretty good pass rush. CeeDee Lamb getting that long touchdown to seal things. And it was just the kind of day for the Cowboys that almost makes you forget some of the bottoming out that they've had this year. But Dak is going to come back. And it's hard. See, there's a football guy's, very avid and loyal fan who, I'll give some advice to, who's a Cowboys fan. And they're another team, Cease, in that position where the more they win, then that entrenches McCarthy, then that entrenches Jerry Jones thinking, I'm doing this right.
Right.
But then again, what's it really going to take for that influence from Jones to not be there anymore and skewing the team? So that's tough times. Tough times, maybe hosting a playoff game for the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's right. Final game we're going to talk about, Week 16, as it's coming to a wrap. And then we got to go watch that Packers game.
Yeah.
20-9, Seattle gets the win over the Rams. Now Goff might not play next week because of a thumb injury. Schefter's just tweeting that now. Now, 234, no touchdowns and a pick on the day for Goff. Cooper Kupp, 8 for 66. Josh Reynolds, 6 for 65. He's giving himself up. 4 for 48 in this one. Tyler Higbee, 3 for 34. Darrell Henderson, 62 yards on the ground. Not much else from anyone else. Obviously, there's no touchdowns here. So, Bumpkiss is what you got.
Yeah, and wow, how things change for the Rams. Let me lay it on you like this. If Arizona beats the Rams next week, who might have to start John Walford, I guess? See, John Walford? I think everyone's like looking at their media, like, well, who, what, where, how? Can you even pull up a reference to an all-star game with the name John Walford?
Let me check.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. That's my point. And if the Bears beat the Packers, and the Cardinals beat the Rams, the Rams are going to miss the playoffs. The Rams are not in the playoffs, and they still have to beat the Cardinals. And the Packers right now, it's 12-0. Or Thursday 13. Did Mason Crosby hit this extra point? But the Packers still have to win next week because of the tiebreakers. So that could be how the Rams back into the playoffs. And back in, it truly will be. This has been a hard team to gauge week to week. There was a Seattle goal line stand. Like you said, no touchdowns. And Sean McVay appeared perturbed. Sean McVay looked like he started Jared Goff in his fantasy championship, which is kind of apt since he started him in the game to try to go to the playoffs, win the title, be in the division title race, at least if they win this game. Jared Goff just doesn't look that good. You're seeing Jared Goff's limitations, and maybe we won't see him at all. But because of that, okay, Cooper Kupp, okay, nobody really outperforming their expectations here. Darrell Henderson had a chance at a touchdown. Jamal Adams comes from the other side of the formation to chase him down. I think Henderson got a little banged up on that too. Just immensely disappointing. You go to Seattle, you hold down Russell Wilson, but I think most specifically because of your quarterback. This is an offense. It's Jordan Rodriguez, I think, who's been covering the Rams now. Used to be on the Panthers beat, talking about how they really are just minimizing turnovers. The overhaul of the offense was to minimize turnovers. Where are you? This is like, are we talking about Mitchell Trubisky? Where are you when your offensive overhaul is let's minimize turnovers? Let's take away low percentage air yards, i.e. give Goff a chance to make plays downfield. And you've seen that missing from the offense. And it's not quite as severe as what we've seen with the Steelers, but it becomes easier and easier to defend the Rams. And now they have to beat Arizona to make sure they get in the playoffs. Again, Green Bay, now if you're a Rams fan, you're rooting for Green Bay. And nothing really changed. This game was as ugly and boring as we had expected for fantasy. But for Seattle, they win a division title. They're actually still in it to be the number 1 seed. Not that home field advantage means anything right now, but you take it over not having home field advantage. And again, we've been saying it every week. They do enough on offense. Not a lot, but enough.
Enough. And that'll do. By the way, John Wolford, nephew of Will Wolford.
Oh, the Bills.
Yeah,
maybe going to be a Bills year.
I never saw John Wolford at the Shrine game. So There you go. Yeah. But he did have some ACC records with Brad Kaya. Bloom, remember him from the U? He was supposed to be the truth. I remember seeing him at the Shrine game, going, God, oi, hi, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Seattle side, whatever. Final game, whatever. Touchdown. Russell Wilson, woo, rushing touchdown. Yay. DK Metcalf, 59 yards. Right on. Tyler Lockett, 44. It was Jacob Hollister with that touchdown in the corner of the end zone. Beautiful thrown pass. And so here you go. Seattle does enough, Bloom. Doesn't blow you away. Not really fantasy relevant, but does enough to get that dub.
Yeah. Isn't Pete Carroll kind of the Mike Tomlin of the NFC, right? Like, there's a lot of things you would do differently than him, but he just has consistent success, which is probably harder than we think in the NFL. I'm sure that if any of us traded places with a head coach, for like 5 minutes, we would immediately be crushed under an avalanche of responsibilities. Like right away, be like, this sucks. Like my whole life and being has to be devoted to this thing, and even then, I don't feel like I've done enough. So hey, Pete Carroll, these teams continuing to win consistently, winning another division. Hats off to them. What do you make out of this team? For fantasy, what does there even talk about? Hopefully you didn't play anybody from the Seahawks. It might have taken some guts, especially with Metcalf, but it was the right call. There was no overachievers here. But what do we make of this team, Cease? Because it was Greg Rosenthal. We love Greg, who had retweeted, like, can't wait to see about the Seahawks resurgence defense piece after they play Carson Wentz, and Colt McCoy and Sam Darnold and Washington's quarterback and now Jared Goff. But there's a little more confidence there with Carlos Dunlap, Jamal Adams healthy now. This offense going back to being, boring. Russ isn't cooking. And they probably think it's fine because they're winning. But then when you get to the playoffs and it's a wide open NFC bracket, Cease, we look at the quarterbacks in the NFC. If you could do a draft of NFC quarterbacks right now and decide your quarterback for your playoff run, who would you pick first?
Who would you pick first?
Russell Wilson, right?
It's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean maybe Aaron Rodgers. So they're right there. They're right there in the mix. And even though this is not a year that really ended up where we expected after how it started for Seattle, it's going to be exciting to see how these teams shake out. Again, the 1, 2, 3 seeds in the NFC still up for grabs. That still hasn't been sorted out. The teams in the playoffs on the wild cards, both sides have not been decided. Lots of seeds up in the air in the AFC. So we have a great week of football to look forward to. And we've had a year of football, Cease, together, and that was great.
And that wasn't always necessarily
a little
shaky. It was. It definitely was. That's right. By the way, Bloom, you know those State Farm, the Jake from State Farm, not the real deal guy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By the way, State Farm commercials have let me know, like, people, they must think people just misunderstand how insurance works. Thanks for that, thanks for that Cecil security discount thing. But when Rodgers like throws his clubs, because you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, and my answer probably would have been Rodgers, Wilson Rodgers, whatever.
Yeah.
But I always think like he's an angry elf because you could see Aaron Rodgers like throwing your clubs or something, like be out on a golf. You definitely could see that in Rodgers. He would be that guy. Russell Wilson would be like the super nice, like, hey, let me get that for you. Polite, kind.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers would be a dick. So
yeah.
I don't know. Do I have to say sorry, Joe, for that?
No.
Nah. It's week 16. I meant a Richard. Were you kidding me? I don't know. Bloom, let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah. It was, look, 2020 has been about surviving. And fantasy football this year, in so much as if you have something to feel good about today, it was about sticking with it and surviving. And maybe some of the things we had to go through that fantasy football helped with were more mundane. Maybe they were more personal or immediate. But it's given us a place to meet and hang out. And for the most part, I think everybody really honors that fantasy football is a positive space, at least a space we've created around us with the help of all the people that are in it. I mean, it's not us that did that.
Well, we're all on the same vibe. You know what I mean? Like, I often tell you, Bloom, like we're doing this for a major audience, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and our chat room is part of our audience. So we have to keep it for everybody. But if you're here, if you make it a point to be here, you're one of us.
Right.
No doubt.
So it's been therapeutic. And I think that, I'm continually thankful that through all the people in our audience, since we've been, validated and accepted, and continue to look for ways to help more people feel that way in their day-to-day life, because it's harder than ever to have those moments where everything does feel at rest. Like, I'm okay. This is okay. This feeling in this place. So thank you, everybody, for helping us create this place and continuing to be here. And in terms of fantasy football, it's odd. I mean, you're happy if you lift the title trophy this year. But again, I think like everything else in life, the background that it's against has made it harder to get caught up in it, which is okay because it's still performing its purpose. And what's great, sees too, about our relationship and how the show goes is we're not even going to really take a breath. We'll be right back. And there's playoff football to talk about where we get to be fans again.
Well, and honestly, Bloom, let's be totally honest. Yeah. Like it's our chat room and it's our people that give us more reason to do the show more often in the off season. This is episode like 260.
Yeah.
Okay. So we used to do like 400 a year, and I was like wanted to get to like 500. I think 260. We've hit our stride. We've hit 260 about the last 3 or 4 years, whatever it is. So like we don't go anywhere, but we might do more during the off season, just like a news and notes check-in, because it's fun to hang out with everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's just how things are changing now, where all this internet personality and the way our consciousness is divided through our mobile devices, through our TVs, our streaming, and things like that. It's just the way that we spend time with each other. It was already in motion. The wheels were in motion before COVID, but it's like COVID has accelerated it. So more than having a reason to have a show and spend time with our people and spend time with each other, we don't need a reason anymore. That's the reason. The reason is it's becoming much more simple to the point that everybody just wants to kind of be in a club and hang out. You know, in New Orleans, all the social aid and pleasure clubs. I mean, and that's what it's great to be part of. Yeah, we're going to be doing that. And we always love the feedback from people and to know how we can best serve you. Because it's really just knowing that people are listening to us, giving us your precious attention is all we ask. And y'all always deliver. What's that? Yeah. All right, Jason.
Okay. All right. There we go. That is a wrap for tonight's program. He is Sigmund Bloom. He is keeper of the flame. That's right. Okay. There you go. We are in a club. Yeah. The Audible Club. Gregory, I like that. I like that. It is the Audible Club. I am Cecil Lammey, your clown. Your jester. Welcome to the club. We'll be back. Week 17 preview. Won't do a recap next week. And then snorkel, scuba, submarine, all-star trip, singular, if there is still going to be a Senior Bowl. That I don't know if that's going to happen, but whatever. Yeah, we're here for you. He's Sigmund Bloom. I am Cecil Lammey. We are the Audible. Everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. And as always, I command that you stay frosty.